This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today, we're here with David Mess of Off the Grid Ventures. David, thank you for joining us. We had a previous interview where you talked about Off the Grid and a little bit about what you do, but maybe we can talk a little bit about what you've been doing since then.
Absolutely. Hi, Hall, and thanks for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk to you and the entire audience. What I've been doing since the last time we talked, mostly managing our portfolio. We've invested in about 25 companies over the past 3 years, and we've only sold or lost 5 of them along the way, so there's still a lot to do. We particularly like to be very active and the involvement of our portfolio companies, we believe makes a difference, especially early in their lives, and so we spend a lot of time there. You may recall that we invest at the seed stage, and here I'm speaking broadly because the categorization between pre-seed, seed, post-seed, and everything else are becoming blurrier by the day. But since we invest at that stage, really it's key for us to build strong relationships with the founders of our companies. And if we manage to do that well and there's trust both ways, then we can go a lot further in the help that we provide. And that's what we're really trying to do. So that's the objective and where we spend most of our time over the last few months.
Well, great. Well, I hear you recently joined the management company of one of your portfolio companies, CreditStacks. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. And that's one of the perfect examples of how active we sometimes get with our companies. Last year, I jumped into one of our companies and spent 3 months trying to sell it, which we successfully did. And now I jumped into CreditStacks. We've been invested in the company for a couple of years. I've observed how the company was doing, and I'm quite excited by what's happening there. The time had come for me to basically jump in and help, not just to help the company raise its next funding round, but also to fine-tune the strategy and move on towards acquisitions over time so we can build the business even further. So let me tell you a little bit what CreditStacks is, so this is understandable. CreditStacks is a company that provides credit cards to people who have a very good credit risk, but are not recognized as such by the American financial system. So to give you an example, if you're an expatriate arriving in this country, you don't have a credit history here, you don't have a credit score here, you may have a very good salary, you may always have paid all of your debts on time, you may actually never had debt because the use of debt is not as expensive in other developed countries as it is in the US. And yet you will come here and you'll be denied a number of not only debt facilities, but financial services overall because you haven't done that. So one of the first things you need to do is find a credit card. Most of the time when people arrive in this country, they get credit cards maybe with an extremely low limit, maybe $500, so they need to pay it every few days so they can deal with that, or they don't get one at all and live on a debit card and don't construct a credit history. CreditStacks is able to give these people a card from day one. The company can identify them early, it can approach them, and it can underwrite them where the traditional players can't just because these people don't have a credit score. And if you think about this problem more generically, there's a much broader issue in the US. There's about 40 or 45 million people who are really pre-prime customers, if you will, people who are a prime risk or should be soon, but are not being served by the market. One of the big categories there is young professionals. You get out of university, you haven't really had debt before, and it's hard to get the first cards. And that's the next market that CreditStacks is going into in the near future. So there's a lot of potential there. It's a great business and something we were pretty eager to jump into.
Well, that's a very large market. Where do you think it's going? A group that big seems like it has quite a bit of purchasing power.
Yes, it is a very large market indeed. You don't even want to know the total amount of credit card debt in this country at this stage, but the number of credit cards is tremendous, right? There's more credit cards than people in this country. The potential is really great for any company that can come in and disrupt the incumbent somewhat, right? And there's a lot of room to do that just because the margins made by credit card companies are quite significant. And so you can eat their margins a little bit to be the good player on the market and to really provide something that people want. If you look at what people want, and especially what young people want right now from credit cards, is to avoid the traps of debt, right? Credit card companies typically try to live off their customers by pushing them to spend more, overspend, get into debt, keep a balance running. In fact, the way their programs are constructed are sometimes so complex that even prime customers, for a very vast proportion of them, more than the majority, actually end up with debt that they carry month to month, whereas they don't need to, just because they don't quite understand how the payment should occur and so on. CreditStacks is entering this market with a different idea, which is we will make sure that we tell you when you need to pay. We will make sure that we tell you if you're reaching, say, about 30% of usage on your credit line, so you can make an anticipated payment, and the credit bureaus will never think that you're over leveraging yourself, and so on and so forth. The entire idea is to help you, the consumer, get to a point where your credit score is improving faster, it's getting higher than you would have otherwise, and it enables you to basically build a financial future that makes sense faster. So that's really the idea, and around that, we also want to be serving the customers with all kinds of relevant experiences. Think of the moment you enter a rental car, right? Say you enter Hertz and you want to rent a car now. I don't know about you, Hall, but I'm always massively confused by which insurance I should take or not. I don't know what my credit card covers. And just by default, to be on the safe side, I end up way overpaying for it. Imagine if your mobile-centric experience with your credit card was telling you, hey, you're entering Hertz right now. These are the two types of insurance that are already given by your card, and this is how they're called in Hertz speak. And this is the fur that you're not covered for. And if you want to take it, this is how it's called in Hertz speak. That would be a tremendous value. It's just one example, but there's a number of things that can be done to let the consumers access the rewards program behind the credit card in a much more positive way, much more pertinent way, rather than just send them a wash list of things in a 8-page font 6 document up front that no one will never absorb, and not helping them along the way to effectively use the things that are available to them.
Well, it sounds like a very customer-friendly way of handling that situation. Do you think other groups are going to follow suit and do the same thing?
Well, yes, to a certain extent, right? I think that as you start disrupting things and entering services that are much more pertinent to the consumers, there will need to be a reaction, especially by the premium card providers. And we absolutely expect that will happen. What will be harder for the incumbents to do, though, is to underwrite people who are entering the market without a credit score, right? And if you can build a company that is able to tackle these people, is not constrained by the same kind of balance sheet rules or other rules that the incumbents need to follow, then you're able to access these consumers early. And if you treat them right from the get-go, you're going to build a trusted relationship with them and hopefully be their primary card provider for a very long time, and then maybe even provide them with additional services in the long run. It's very hard then for the incumbents to fight back against something like that. Of course, they will remain there, but they will lose significant chunks of market share. More importantly, they will drop from being the top of wallet card behind ours if we do our job correctly.
Great. Well, it sounds like a great opportunity. It sounds like it's going well, and looking forward to seeing how it turns out.
Yep. Thank you. No, it's a great company. Very, very excited about the growth prospects that are absolutely tremendous in the years to come.
Great. Well, in a more general note, you've been investing in other companies and just wanted to see how that was going for you. Are there any particular companies out there that you've found to be great wins aside from CreditStacks, or any ones that turned out to be not so great wins? What would you say has been the experience the last few years?
Well, if I look at our portfolio, we've had a company growing extremely fast over the past couple of years. It's a company called Rank My App. It's a Brazilian company originally. You may recall that Off the Grid Ventures invests in quote unquote off the grid entrepreneurs, mostly foreign founders and female founders of companies. And I'm sure you detect the common thread here with what CreditStacks does as well. And we backed this Brazilian company, and they've been, I cannot divulge precise numbers, but they've been multiplying their revenues by almost 10 in the last couple of years, growing extremely fast, growing across Latin America. And we have grand expectations for them. Rank My App is an ASO company. So ASO stands for App Store Optimization. So think about SEO but for applications. So helping publishers have their applications noticed on the app stores, have people sign up for them in greater numbers, have less people churn through them, et cetera, et cetera.
So, of all the investments you make, what sectors are you passionate about? What lens are you taking into the market at this point?
We're B2B tech investors. That's what we do day in, day out. I think that we have great expertise there. We see a lot of opportunities still in a number of areas. There's still a lot of very good SaaS companies being built. We see actually that the API ecosystem is really thriving. And if you think about the future of companies, more and more the companies will be defined by their technology. And as you assimilate more and more different technologies into what you do, you need different systems to work together. And APIs are the glue that holds it all together. So we see a great opportunity for best-of-breed companies to develop very specific products and provide them through an API strategy, right? And kind of an open strategy to embed them in with other technologies. We see a lot of hope for that. On a more personal note, something that's outside what Off the Grid Ventures typically does, I started looking at space exploration. I think it's absolutely tremendous, everything that's happening there right now. I don't have personally the scientific knowledge to be able to understand it all, but I do think it's great. And I've made at least one personal investment in the space because I just think that some companies there are doing really life-changing things. I invest in a company called Momentous. What Momentous does is to effectively develop propulsion systems that enable you to safely move satellites or any payload from one orbital point to another. So think about the way you send satellites into space today. Either you send your satellite to a standard orbit, which is great. Then you can ride share with 8 to 12 other satellites on your rocket, and you divide the cost by as much, right? Maybe a bit less because, of course, the rocket company is going to make money, but you see the point. Ride sharing is good. If you want to send it to a specific orbit, right now, the typical way you do it is you hop on a rocket by yourself. And although companies like SpaceX are trying to make their rockets land again so they're reusable, the cost of doing so on a standalone basis is really, really high. Imagine now if you could, on the contrary, ride share to a standard orbit, and then for a reasonably cheap price, you could move your satellite from that orbit to a different point in space. Suddenly, you're making the cost of sending your satellite to a bespoke orbit much, much lesser. And that enables a number of applications that we haven't been able to do so far. And there's a watch list of them. One that I find particularly exciting, and I hope we're going to get to in the coming decade or so, is sending data centers into space. Right? If you think about electrical consumption in the US and in most developed countries today, 5 to 10% goes into data centers and electronics and so on. If you can send your data centers up into space, you're effectively harvesting energy directly from the sun with solar panels that can be 24/7 at 90 degrees to the sun without any ozone layer diminishing the efficiency. And of course, absolutely no emissions on Earth. So even if we manage to send a small portion of our data centers up there and communicate back with communications technologies back to Earth, which these technologies exist, are fairly easy to implement, it would be absolutely fantastic. So when I saw that, I couldn't resist making a personal investment, even if my firm doesn't understand this in detail, and we couldn't risk other people's money doing that.
Well, it appears commercialization of space is picking up speed rapidly. How far do you think we'll get in the next 5 or 10 years with commercializing it with SpaceX and the other players that are there now?
I think we'll go extremely far. I think the progress that has been made by SpaceX, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and others, some of the incumbents too, is really tremendous. There's more and more applications we can have in space, and I'm not thinking about fun things like tourism, which will happen as well, but more fundamental applications that will make life much better on Earth. Now, I think this is on an exponential curve. The major issue we have right now is to figure out how we can effectively police the trajectories of all of the satellites we're putting up there to make sure that we don't have too many of them and end up colliding and creating all kinds of debris and further issues. But, if we manage that correctly, I think the sky's the limit. And as you know, exploration beyond just commercial, but the exploration over the past couple of decades has been absolutely phenomenal. And I'm sure we'll think of things in the next 10 years that we really haven't thought of so far.
Well, that's great. Well, appreciate you sharing these things in the last few minutes that we have here today. What else should we cover that we haven't?
It's a good question. I think one of the things that really strikes me is how thriving the ecosystem is for startups, not only in the Silicon Valley now, but across the country and beyond. You see Europe really picking up, especially countries like France right now, which are really interesting. You see, of course, China has been picking up for a while now, and innovation is happening everywhere, right? And so what we believe in at Off the Grid Ventures is that you can find great entrepreneurs everywhere. But if you really want to accelerate your company, for B2B tech companies at least, most often you should come to Silicon Valley and really leverage the ecosystem that is here. Over time, though, I think that the ecosystem will become more relevant in other places too. And I think the venture industry will have to evolve towards firms that have a more global footprint. Some firms already do that, but it's been difficult in most cases. Very often you've seen firms venture to other continents and end up splitting in different teams. So that's, I think, one of the major challenges that the venture industry is going to have to face in the next 10 to 15 years.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
No, same here. Thanks a lot for having me on, and don't hesitate to call back. I'm always happy to talk to you.
Great. We'll put your contact details in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today. Hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thank you. Hope to do so as well. Goodbye.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Alti Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for the basis of investment decisions.